Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is George.
My name is Tom.
And my name is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com.
Gentlemen, my video this week, apologies, I look like a ghost, a red ginger ghost.
Ginger ghost.
Yeah, ginger ghost with a fantastic beard.
It's going, guys. It's going to go next week because hairdressers are opening up.
Oh.
And I am going to cut and shave and wax every single bit of hair off my body because it's the end of lockdown. So
It's like that, is it Castaway? Where he's got the big scraggly beard?
Yeah, where Tom Hanks ends up.
You'll go from Castaway to Forrest Gump in no time, mate.
That's it.
Man, it'll look real weird. I haven't seen you without a beard in ages.
You're going to look like a Hitler youth, a little military, just like short back and sides, just like ready, for, to enforce the supreme. I don't know where this is going. I don't know where I started. How did we get here?
I know where it was going, and I'm glad it didn't get there.
I'm just saying Adam has a certain, militant look about him when he's got a close haircut. He certainly looks like,
I'd say that I look more militant now than...
He definitely looks like he could blow up a building in Ohio. That's all I'm saying. Like,
the white balance is so bad that I do look like I am an albino white supremacist person.
White balance is the right phrase for sure.
Yes, lockdowns are easing.
Lockdown is easing. That was the point I was getting at.
Yes.
Here in Victoria, we were told this morning, as of midnight tonight, we're allowed to move up to 25 kilometers from our homes rather than 5. Up to 10 people can gather in an outdoor place, providing they're only from 2 households, which muddies it a little bit. Like, it doesn't change. I don't know about you guys, but it barely changes sort of my circumstances in that sense. But I know for larger families, it'll be a big deal.
Yeah, for Italian, it's really only, this is an announcement that only affects wogs, basically. It's just basically Greek and Italian families can get together and nobody else, basically.
As the Greek and Italian person on the podcast, you said it, I didn't.
That's my word, okay? It's my fucking word.
Yeah.
And of course, if your rising sign is Pisces, then you'll be able to go to regional Victoria.
But only if standing on your left foot during a hurricane.
Exactly, yep. So there are a number of announcements, but it gets kind of complicated and convoluted.
And they also muddied it a bit, being like, there's these are what are easing from tonight, but also in 2 weeks. So like November 1, they'll ease these. But if you're very good, we'll ease them a week earlier. Or like, okay.
I got to be honest, that's so much information for me to keep in my dumb fucking head. You're just going to have to be like, can I go walkies? Can I visit my parents? Just like, you've got to keep it real simple for my dumb brain. I'm going to have to look at the summary on this on ABC afterwards because I did not remember a fucking thing from that press conference.
That's the thing, because there's some major, well, I say some major, there was one like contradiction in it where I was a bit like, hang on, I don't understand what you've changed then. Because, as of like tonight or whatever, so yeah, the 25K rule, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the ones they talked about was that they removed the, there's no longer a time restriction for exercising and socializing.
Yes.
So, previously it was up to 2 hours once a day or something like that to be, if you're going for a jog or whatever, or catching up with friends outside. But yes.
Now you can exercise 6 times a day for several hours apiece.
Yeah. But in 2 weeks, one of the things that they said they're getting rid of is the 4 reasons to leave your home are scrap. And those 4 reasons, like, shopping for supplies, going to work, healthcare, and like going to school or whatever, like, those sorts of things. So it's like, wait a minute. So those aren't scrapped until later. But from tomorrow, I'm allowed to spend as much time outside socializing as I want. But outside socializing isn't one of the 4 things.
Yes.
The 4 things are enforced for 2 more weeks. But as of tomorrow, I don't have to do that. Like, wait a minute.
Tom. You see, you're allowed outside to socialize, but you have to be running on the spot for the entire time. What? So exercising.
Right. So it's like the mask thing. All these people who are like, why aren't you wearing a mask? I'm jogging. No, you're not. Yeah, I am. Just jogging on the spot.
Look, I'm not going to lie. I do not wear a mask when I ride my bike. That's because my glasses fog up. So,
well, that's a hazard.
That's so brave of you, Adam. I hopped on my bike to go for a bike ride, and I was like, you know what? I'm exercising. Like, it's not just me going for a walk, but like proper exercise. I'm going to be huffing and puffing. I think it's fair enough if I don't wear a mask. And I got to the end of my street, and this sort of ethnic-looking lady looked at me and sort of greased me off, and I was like, on she goes. On goes my mask. I made it about 30 meters, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm wearing a mask during my bike ride, and it was unpleasant. But I did it because I'm a total bitch. I'm a bitch for peer pressure.
Yeah, no, riding a bike, I get it. Like, and people who are like jogging hard, I get it. But also, you can wear a mask and jog. Like, I've done it. Alice does it.
You don't strike me. You don't strike me as a jogger, Tom. Don't take that the wrong way. But
I don't often jog. It's true. I won't sit here and pretend that I'm a great person who goes to jog. I'm basically BoJack Horseman when it comes to jogging. Like, I'm the get a couple meters down the street and be like, why does anyone do this? Like, this is pain.
You're normal.
I'm more, maybe do some push-ups and sit-ups and some Pilates in front of a TV kind of exercise person.
Put some Battlestar Galactica on, get some sit-ups in.
There's something in it for me, is what I'm saying. Living longer and being healthier just doesn't cut it.
That doesn't count.
I gotta it has to fit in with my TV watching schedule.
Oh, that's fair enough. This sounds like an exercise regime to which I can subscribe quite easily, Tom. I'm a big fan of this new program.
Smash that subscribe button, guys.
Smash the like button. Speaking of smashing the like button,
if you have great ways in order to exercise at home while watching television, sound off in the comments.
It's out of control. The comment section is out of control.
It's funny that you say that, Tom. I hear you're a bit of a social media influencer now after your tweet went viral this afternoon.
No, it barely went viral. It's only had 2 retweets and 50 likes, but 10,000 impressions.
That's a lot of impressions.
That means that 9,900 and 48 people saw it and kept scrolling. Saw it, kept scrolling. Not a like, not a chuckle. Kept going.
Just a big fuck you.
They just did the comedian laugh where they go, just to themselves, and they go, that's funny.
Well, yeah, and that's up there with those people who retweet stuff and just say, like, I am screaming, where I'm like, no, you didn't. You just nose snorted for like half a second and retweeted it. Yeah,
they're like, lol, rolling on the floor laughing, shat myself from too much laughter, and then like smash cut to them in person, they're just like,
Yeah, they're just in bed like,
good one.
Like, retweet, keep going.
Speaking of rufflecoptering, Ozpol this week has been #Ozpol has been a bit of a laughing stock, bit of an action-packed lol fest.
So
let you say that
which
like
side of politics you're on?
Anything else at any other time?
Yeah, I was going to say Australian politics at all points is a laughing stock. Surely, at no point did no one sit around in the last week and gone, you know what, guys, it's pretty fucked up. It's gone too far. This is unprecedented.
It's been a big week, and it all started on Monday. I'll give you the summary, and we'll dive back into some of the other bits and pieces as we go.
If you think you've had a bad Monday,
Monday was huge. So Monday, senior advisor to Mr. Andrews resigned because of bloody phone call that may or may not have happened, and what were the details of the phone call? We don't know, but he's got to resign anyway. So that was fun. Of course, everyone
doing the hotel quarantine, right?
Yeah, basically.
The important thing is, Adam, we got a scalp, and I don't care whose scalp it is, and I don't remember the guy's name, but it's very important that we have accountability for someone that I've forgotten. It's all extremely important for good governance, Adam. I don't know why you can't. Sorry, go on. And what else?
Oh, look, and then there was a no confidence motion that was defeated.
Against Gladys Berejiklian or against Dan Andrews?
Against Dan Andrews.
There's multiple states that have got very little to no confidence, but enough confidence, as it turns out.
Mr. No one remembers his name, generic dude who's the head of the opposition here.
Michael O'Brien, the Minister for Potatoes.
Michael Smith. Michael
Tim
Stevens,
Bryans.
You just pick a generic politician name.
Hello,
that's him.
I'm Bob Whiteman. The most generic Whiteman you ever saw.
The World Health, this isn't really Ozpol, but it's related. World Health Organization was misquoted saying as lockdowns shouldn't be used as a measure of control.
Okay.
I jumped on that.
Sound like something the World Health Organization would say.
Pretty significant misquote there. Essentially what, as I understood, the thrust of the argument there was like lockdowns should be a measure to get your contact tracing up to a certain level, and then from there, you shouldn't have need of a lockdown because you've got the virus under a certain amount of control from that point onwards. It doesn't say that lockdowns doesn't work. If anything, the Victoria going down to single digits this week, 1 and 2 and 1 cases in the last couple of days, would indicate that lockdowns very much work. And Alan Jones, Daddy Dandrews, will take his apology in writing and hand jobs. So,
the apology probably wasn't coming to this point.
Unlike one night as Daddy Dandrews.
It's no hand jobs.
From Peter Credlin in particular, who basically had a verbal wrestling match several times this week with Mr. Andrews about, did he know about the phone call at 12:30, and was the phone call, was he in the room when the phone call happened? And your evidence shows. Anyway, so that went on for a whole couple of days.
As usual, we focused on the most important parts of this crisis.
Oh, yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in New South Wales, Gladys, she had a interesting time at ICAC this week, which is the Independent
Commission Against Corruption.
Yes, which we'll get into in a sec.
This commission very much against corruption, taking a very brave stand and not in favour of corruption, unlike some members of Gladys Berejiklian's government.
What else happened? Oh yeah, Scott Morrison's car was painted red by students when he visited a uni, because turns out you probably shouldn't visit a university after cutting all the.
Turns out when you double a cost of the arts degree, of your average arts degree, maybe you shouldn't go to a university. Maybe I don't want to what was he wearing this situation, but it does kind of seem like he was asking for it, just like ever so slightly. I don't know what he was expecting, but a bucket of red paint might have been in keeping with what happened. Did they spray paint it, or what was it exactly?
It's just red paint over his car, and they ran away with.
It's not clever, but appreciate the effort.
Art students, they're crafty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see now, if they'd been allowed to continue their arts education more fully, perhaps they might have written a really cohesive manifesto, some sort of diatribe, maybe a sonnet on the side of his car. But see, obviously, some of them were priced out of that due to the changes. So,
and I'm not sure if this happened on the Tuesday or the Monday, but there was questions in Queensland about the opposition leader being referred to their version of ICAC, the Triple C, I think it's called. And then I think around the same time, Kevin Rudd's also started a petition to shit on the Murdoch media, or have a royal commission into the Murdoch.
Yeah, I believe the official term is start an inquiry or a royal commission rather than taking a hot steamy dump, I think was the exact wording.
So bloody love a royal commission here, don't we?
Love a royal commission. Let's have a royal commission into everything, including what I'm going to have for lunch.
Royal commission into royal commissions.
Yeah, I was
just
say,
an
royal
idea.
Commissions seem to have a monopoly on investigations into corruption in this country, and I think we shouldn't let it stand.
What about a Four Corners report? Just as good.
So that was effectively Monday, Tuesday-ish in Ozpol, and it was hectic.
That was 48 hours.
2 days. Is this what it's like living in America?
Yes, all the time.
So much happening in one bloody 48-hour period.
So let's go back and we'll unpack some of that.
Let's hop in the Wayback Machine before all the votes of no confidence in the various governments.
What do you guys want to start with? Should we go to Gladys, perhaps?
I think Gladys is probably
the biggest one of the week.
Yeah, probably the biggest one. So, the Premier of New South Wales, what Americans would understand to be the Governor of New South Wales, our most populous state here in Australia, Gladys Berejiklian, say that 3 times fast, was found to be, I don't know what the reportedly what the high journalistic integrity way of saying this is, but she was fucking one of her subordinates,
fraternizing,
stooping,
George, they were in a serious, committed relationship.
Yes. And herein lies the problem, Adam, because if you're in a serious, committed relationship, one of your obligations as a Minister of Parliament is to disclose that relationship to avoid any conflicts of interest, which Gladys Berejiklian and her partner, who was a former disgraced Minister for Wagga Wagga, whose name... Daryl Maguire, thank you very much, declined to do. And when I say disgraced, I mean pretty thoroughly disgraced, dragged.
Like there's corruption, and then there's like, is he corrupt? Like, I don't really know.
You'd be like, is it, is it just the garden variety corruption, a little bit of influence peddling, or is it literally like selling access to the Premier? And it seems like it was more of the latter than the former. But if you listen to the reporting about it, they're just like, oh, just everyone's piling on poor Gladys just because she wants to have a personal life. Look, even ugly people deserve to get laid. Gladys deserves a boyfriend, doesn't she? Everyone's just prying into her private life. And it's like, yeah, except that's not what this is about. Like, it's not about her fucking private life. It's about, like, just on the pure fact that you did not declare this relationship alone, it should be grounds for you to resign. Like, that is... not just like garden variety corruption, that is you going out of your way not to disclose deliberately financial dealings that might be relevant to the interests of the taxpayer. Like, that's corruption. I don't know what else you call it, but...
The reason why all this came out was that at ICAC, they basically had tapped their phones.
Love it.
Maguire's, and I think they were looking into Maguire first, and then it's come up through association with her. But anyway, they just started playing these phone calls, and they were just like, what do you think of this? What's her name? Berejiklian.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was meant to be like an appearance that was meant to last for like an hour or something. And
sucked in.
ABC was like, ABC 24 just like went straight live to it, and they were just streaming the whole thing and being like, well, look, we have to break for lunch and come back. And she was like, I've got matters of state. And they're like, no, you need to stay.
How about you sit the fuck down, Gladys? You should have brought a muesli bar. This is going to be a long one. It was like 5.
You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, here's a protein shake. Sit the fuck down. And that was a good 5 or 6 hours, wasn't it? Like this sort of inquiry was going on for that she was there for. And something which the Friendly Geordies sort of comedian commentator pointed out is like she does this thing where she's like sort of laughing throughout it, like, haha, we're all in this together. And the lawyer for ICAC is just like, we are absolutely fucking not in this together. Like, just like no shit's given whatsoever. I just love politicians.
The lawyer was very much like, this is serious.
On point. Just like, I was just like drinking LMP tears. There was so much Schadenfreude. Like, I love politicians being uncomfortable. Like, it is my favorite. It is a pastime of mine. It's like, what do you like to do? Model ships, the occasional bike ride, and just watching Gladys Berejiklian fucking squirm in her seat. Those are my hobbies.
So just for a bit of background, so Maguire, what was he initially?
I believe there was a thing of like a cash for visas.
Yes,
was something that he was involved in, like the idea of like, hey, for $10,000, I'll talk to local businesses in Wagga Wagga and hook you up with a job, so you'll be sponsored and easily get a visa. I'll take the $10,000 in cash. Please.
It is like a cartoon villain version of fucking corruption. You know what I mean? Like cash for visas. I don't know if you're wanting like a more comprehensive explanation than that. That's exactly what it fucking sounds like. You give me cash, I get you a visa. It is the definition of pay for play. Like money, like dollar sign on the side of a canvas fucking bag corruption. Like,
and given our country's heinous track record with immigration and all that sort of stuff, makes it even more horrific. It's like, oh, if you're a poor person escaping a war and have just desperately tried to get to the country to save your life, you can go to an internment camp.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
But if you've got $10,000, come on in.
Justice can work for you if you too have $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing he kind of did was, where is it? He'd received kickbacks. Love a good kickback for setting up meetings between Chinese businessmen and South Pacific government officials. They were apparently going to set up some sort of casino in Samoa. That deal fell through, but like he would have gone through with it if it had gone through.
There was a successful deal with that he mentions. So basically, the whole hearing was them, Maguire and Berejiklian saying like, I don't recall, and them saying, hey, listen to this tape. Does this refresh your memory? And
yeah, we have you on tape saying this.
Yes, it does. Thank you. It does refresh my memory. Thank you. I realized I was horrendously corrupt. Thank you for bringing that up.
That corruption.
Oh,
God.
There's
Mondays.
There was another, and this is the one that's really damning because it implicates Berejiklian sort of directly, is where her secret partner, Maguire, tells her about a successful deal with a Chinese-backed company, UWE, which would pay off some of his debts. Now, considering that he was a member of her party and they were engaged in a secret relationship and directly affects business in the state, you would think that that would be the sort of time to turn around and sound the alarm and say, hey, I've found out pretty much for sure that this guy's engaging in corrupt practices. I'm going to alert ICAC now that I'm aware of this. But Gladys declined to do that, saying, quote, you don't need to tell me that bit, and we can play the tape if you would like. If you guys would like.
I think you've got it.
I could share it.
I think you're still in character there, sorry. Yes. Let's go, if you've got it.
Yeah, let's go. Okay.
We love a good impromptu stream.
Here we go.
Yeah, I've been doing my books, my accounts.
Yeah.
Counting my tax refund.
Good.
That's excellent.
Given the size of it, it'll take you all week to count it all.
It's true. And the good news is William tells me we've done our deal. So hopefully that's about half of all that gone now.
That's good. I don't need to know about that bit.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You do not. So anyway, it's all good news. So we're moving ahead.
Okay, good.
And you could literally hear him.
Fuck up, Daryl.
You can literally hear the moment where his heart breaks, where he realizes he'd done fucked up, because he's like, no, you don't. You do not need to know about that. Whoops.
Oh my God, like turning.
Sorry, babe.
Just hearing something like that be also kind of dirty talk is just really cringy. It's just like, oh yeah, hopefully pay off that debt, this corruption. You don't need to know about that though, do you, love?
And she's like, I absolutely fucking do not need to know about that, as we've discussed previously, Daryl.
On an open line, you pleb.
Yeah, it's literally like The Sopranos. Like, are you calling me on an open line? Like, call me back using the burner, dummy.
Boy, yeah, it's just like, are you calling from your house, you idiot?
Now, I'm not really sure of 100% of the timeline of some of these things, but basically he was fired in 2018 after the whole cash for visas thing came out. But apparently their relationship continued on an on-again, off-again sort of way up until August of this year. So
yeah, correct.
You've got to wonder
how many corruption scandals does it take before you end a relationship? For me, it's one.
But also,
just one.
So it was still in, like, I mean, I don't keep a lot of tabs on Gladys Berejiklian's personal life, but so it was still like a secret relationship up until August. Yeah. Like, I know this is the first
up until like,
but is it the first like?
Up until this week.
This week.
Yeah.
It was secret.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So yeah, it's sort of the thing of like, hey babe, so I got done on corruption. Like, it's okay. Like, we just stay together sort of thing. I'm still the premier, and so now in a unofficial capacity, you can be telling me stuff. Like, oh my God.
It's not ideal.
The other thing that I think Maguire did, this is another one of the sort of controversial things, is that he gave the Premier's direct email to one of the Waterhouse, one of the trainers.
To Louise Waterhouse. So yeah, basically literally pay for play. So Maguire stood to receive a payment of up to $1.5 million related to a land sale, and he provided the Premier's private email address to allow Louise Waterhouse to lobby for changes that would benefit her land at Badgerys Creek. So basically saying, hey, they've got an issue, something about roads and access and who's responsible for building this. I was just like too bored to get to exactly into the detail of it. But The important part is that he sold access to the Premier. That's the thing that is of note about that interaction.
Yeah.
Look, in some cultures, George, in other countries, a bribe is just the one. It's not really a bribe. It's just a small payment just gets things done. That's the system.
As Tony Soprano would say, you need to kick a certain percentage upstairs. That's just the rules of good government.
So, yeah, I mean, Gladys has obviously not resigned. Everyone thought she was going to. She said that I've done nothing wrong. And certainly there are a lot of people in the community, as well as there are various media outlets, as George hinted earlier in the show, that are quite sympathetic to her. And they think that she's been the victim of,
it's a relentless partisan assault. These lefties in the media trying to go after poor Gladys. She's just trying to get her fuck on.
Well, yeah, that somehow she was just lover's blind and that she wasn't really thinking clearly because she was so,
Are we meant to believe that it was just that scene from Ghost where, Gladys Berejiklian's at the pottery wheel, Daryl Maguire comes up behind her, starts getting all clay all over his hands. He goes, by the way, I fucking sold some access to Chinese visas. She goes, what? And he goes, nothing. And then, oh, my love.
Nothing, sorry. We'll take this online.
It's no big deal. That's just what people do, Adam, in their private lives is none of our business in the public, especially when it's selling access to the head of government. That's normal stuff. Why do you ask?
This makes Barnaby Joyce's, antics seem tame.
He was remember when Barnaby Joyce was only impregnating one of his subordinates and then resigned in disgrace? Gladys Berejiklian was like, let's not forget that this is also as far. I am not interested in the lurid details of Gladys Berejiklian's vanilla fucking sex life, okay? I'm so beyond, but you were fucking a subordinate, okay? A minister in your government, you ultimately are responsible for aside from all the, obvious potential issues that it might cause, it's just ethically fucking fraught for a head of government to be doing something so bold-facedly stupid, because if someone found out about this would make you open to blackmail. There's a reason that David Petraeus stood down when similar allegations were made about him that he was fucking his biographer or whatever, is because it makes you vulnerable to bad actors being able to potentially blackmail you, and you're the head of the fucking state. I don't know. I just there's just so many levels to this. It's just bad judgment, inappropriate. And it also seems like Gladys Berejiklian has a case, an advanced fucking case of dementia, because you can't remember a single fucking thing that's ever happened. Based on that alone, you should fucking step down. I don't recall.
Yeah. I one thing I want to get your opinion on though, guys, is that obviously this, and I mentioned briefly that there's also another similar thing happening in Queensland where they're talking about the opposition leader being possibly referred to the Triple C. But the question being is there are a lot of state anti-corruption bodies which seem to be doing something at various levels at various times. Why don't we have a federal one, and should we have a federal one?
I don't know, and yes, Tom?
I would say because it's probably the decision of the dang government to institute one, and they know if they instituted one that they would be found corrupt AF and go to jail. And yes is my answer to the second one.
Yeah, that was easy.
That's probably why.
That's a leading question.
Government is not keen to look into government because government is good until government looks at government and sees that government is bad.
Government finds government good. Yeah, exactly right.
Government knows nothing, sees nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, government is that guy from Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing!
Yeah.
Not only from a point of financial gain or conflicts of interest, but also in terms of international relations. We remember when Sam Daciari, for instance, you had basically I don't know if it was pay for play, but there was a link between.
He asked I think it was a Chinese businessman to pay a legal bill of his, which amounted to $5,000 or something like that. It wasn't a massive amount of money, but this is the thing with the government. It is important for the citizenry in an elected democratic government to have faith in the decision-making capabilities of their government. You need to believe that when people make decisions, they're doing so because it is in the best interest of the people and not because there's a pecuniary, financial interest involved. Even just for the appearance of corruption, even if it may not have necessarily corrupted any specific decisions, you can't show a quid pro quo. I gave you this money and therefore I got this result. Even just for the appearance of corruption, for people to have faith in the system of democracy working, Sam Dastyari should resign in that situation, which he did. And the problem is there is no federal body, like aside from the news media, who obviously, have their own incentives to sensationalize and sex scandals and all that sort of stuff. There really is no federal body in place to prevent that kind of corruption. And one could argue it's even more important on a federal level than it is on a state level because the amounts of financial dealings are like so much higher. We're talking about billions of dollars rather than millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like the stakes are so much higher at a federal level. You think it would just stand to reason that if we have this set of standards, ministerial codes of conduct and all this sort of stuff, and we enforce them on a state level, why would we? What is the argument against enforcing them on a federal level? That's what I don't understand.
I mean, it's also interesting that Scott Morrison he's argued against the federal ICAC several times, but he was also the same guy who argued against the Banking Royal Commission. So, it's obviously, as you guys said, there's a fear there. I think that would be things dug up that would be not wanted to be seen by various parties.
You have to expect that it would be equally damaging for like all sides of politics. Like to a certain degree, it would be a circular firing squad, in which case I'm fine with that. Like if everyone gets fucked by this and we root out corruption, isn't that good? Isn't that the point? Like, I don't care if it hurts my party or your party. Everyone's party should get fucked over by this because they're investigating corruption.
Like I'm sure there are, on Labor's side, I'm sure there are links between the various union movements,
of course,
and various factions of the Labor Party, which traditionally have been there anyway, but that are still at a point which are probably need to be questioned. But on the flip side, you've got people like Barnaby Joyce running around who have got, interests in farming assets and, along the Murray-Darling Basin that are making decisions, that affect communities which are potentially compromised. That's a hypothetical example. I'm not sure of the 100% details on that.
Friend of the show, Jack, is writing in. Call it out, George. Fed ICAC now. Could not agree more, Jack, with your agreement of my own views.
But look, it won't happen with this government, so maybe, maybe the next one. Speaking of...
Gee, that's the saddest fucking segue I've ever heard in my life. Jesus Christ.
Speaking of the news media, we mentioned before that Mr. Rudd has launched a petition for a royal commission into, basically into the Murdoch media to try and ensure a strong, diverse Australian news media, but it's basically targeting Murdoch. Okay. It's now got 316,625 signatures. I don't know what the significance of that is, whether that's a good amount and what that does if you have a good amount.
Is it one of those a certain amount has to be looked at?
No, so it doesn't require a certain level to receive attention, just the more the better. And we will be directing people to that as well. I thought we might roll this little 2-minute video that I've got of Kevin Rudd, where he sort of spruiks it a little bit and talks about the Murdoch press. If you guys are happy with that.
We'll probably get done for copyright infringement, but let's do it.
I mean, we're spruiking the petition. Surely this is only a benefit to the cause.
Indeed.
Like a lot of Australians, I sit down over breakfast of a morning and have a look at the morning papers. Yes, a bit old-fashioned. I still go to print, but I also look online. Last Sunday, James Murdoch in the New York Times made an extraordinary statement. He dropped a bombshell. He explained his reasons for resigning from the Murdoch Media Empire Board. He said that the Murdoch media empire was engaged in all sorts of hidden agendas, and most particularly, he said, that they were engaged in the legitimization of disinformation. Now, this is a major story with big news value by any person's definition. But each morning, the last 4 days, I've gone through my Murdoch papers, The Australian, Courier Mail, Murdoch's Daily Telegraph, as well as the Herald Sun Online, as well as the Adelaide Advertiser, as well as the Hobart Mercury and the rest of the Murdoch stable. He owns 70% of the print readership in this country. Not a single line of coverage. The Murdoch media empire has become a protection racket, not just for the Liberal and National Party, but also a protection racket for themselves against any criticism coming their way. It's extraordinary. It's a cancer on our democracy. And if any of you are in doubt about what James Murdoch meant, the Oxford Dictionary defines disinformation as, and I quote, false information which is intended to mislead, especially propaganda issued by a government organisation to a rival power. Extraordinary. We've seen this at work on climate change in Australia for the last decade, through the Murdoch media. One set of disinformation after another to prevent this country from acting on climate change. It's time to act. 250,000 Australians have already signed our petition demanding a Murdoch Royal Commission. Please add your signature today.
I have one question. How many takes did it take for him to get that? Because if we've seen anything of Kevin Rudd in the past, it does take him a few goes trying to get the speech.
Only when he's speaking in Chinese, in all fairness.
Oh, of course, yeah. Fucking hard.
I really enjoyed the sort of the mise en scène. You know, you got the open milk there, you got the open little Vegemite there, you got a little used tea bag sitting on the plate there. I was just like, beautiful little filmmaking.
Physically picking up the papers.
Here's the Australian. It's weird. I love the Australian. No, he didn't say that, but it was obviously a little bit staged. But I think that, like that James Murdoch story, we talked about it when it happened, that he left News Corp. He's right. It is getting no coverage in the Murdoch press. It's interesting.
Well, why would they? I mean, it's not in their self-interest.
Yes, but journalists are not meant to be self-interested and beholden to their parent company's wants. Surely Tom might be able to disagree with me on this, but surely there's meant to be some sort of journalistic integrity at play there.
Yeah, the should. That's the thing. There's a lot of should sort of in there.
So I really don't. I was surprised that there wasn't a single line of coverage. Right, I knew it wouldn't be front page news, right? As it possibly should be. But certainly, to have some coverage on the issue seems like it is a news story that's out there in the world. Maybe we'll put it on page 9 or something. But like to have no coverage during that period is pretty astounding.
It would make sense with a lot of the coverage we've had of the pandemic in Victoria, why there's been so much misinformation pushed around, or like if it is a legitimate effort by the Murdoch media. Well, for instance, the hashtags that are getting passed around and artificially inflated. Whether that's being done by them, it would make sense with what Mr. Murdoch's actually said. For James Murdoch, I recently watched the documentary that's currently on the ABC about the Murdochs, a 3-part docuseries called what was it called? The Rise of the Murdoch Dynasty, which is great. It's on ABC iView if you want to check it out now. Highly recommend it. But it talks about James Murdoch basically going to bat for his dad during the News of the World scandal, and sort of that's obviously is a big part of the docuseries, and sort of how there was the phone hacking where they were basically invading people's privacy essentially for the sake of getting a scoop journalistically, and this was done on a systemic basis, bribing cops. Like, this was criminal activity that was being done at this newspaper in order to get the edge. James Murdoch defended his dad, threw himself under the bus for his dad in order to, sort of take the air out of this scandal, and didn't he at no point during that process did he throw his hands up and say, this is completely unacceptable. I'm part of a organization that is doing the wrong thing and I can't abide being here anymore. He stayed through that. And it's only now in the wake of all of the current practices of the remaining Murdoch empire, whatever's left that hasn't been sold off to Disney, which is true. That's all true. That he's, now starting to speak up, has left the company, is speaking out against the, disinformation and misinformation practices.
Yeah, for you to stand by literally phone hacking the voicemail of a dead girl like that, I can stand by. But you know what I mean? Like, it has to be pretty...
The trigger point has to be...
something pretty explosive, right? Yeah, and so if you are interested in signing that petition, it's at aph.gov.au, and we'll also be posting the link in the description if you would like to go and sign your name up to that petition to have a royal commission into the Murdoch press and lack of press freedoms. Well, press antitrust. What am I saying? Concentration of media ownership.
It's interesting to see how... I mean, one thing we'll say about Kevin Rudd is that he's got a particular interest in this, obviously, because it's pretty much the Murdoch empire that made him not be Prime Minister anymore. So,
well, yeah, they were the We Hate Kevin club.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's got an axe to grind.
Do you remember, I think it was the on the front of the Courier Mail, I remember screenshotting it at the time because I thought it was so egregious, where it just says, like, it had an Australian flag flapping in the wind, and then a huge, like, this is the front page of the whole paper, and just like a big... life-size, like Michelangelo's David version of fucking Tony Abbott looking down this camera just says, "We need Tony." And I was like, boy, we are just done with journalistic just impartiality. We're just finished. We're just done with it. Like, we're not interested in Australia needs Tony. The Daily Telegraph. That's who it was. You know? It's
like that. Like the opinion pieces have been a thing in the papers for
Sure.
ages. But for your front page story
to be an opinion piece,
to be one of your editorials
Yeah.
is a bit. It's on the nose.
and I understand that there's a disagreement that I was having with someone recently where he was saying, you know, like, well, but all media's corrupt. Everyone's got a bias. Everyone's got a perspective. I was like, yes. But that doesn't mean that you still have to go with believability weighted sources with people that are professing and continue to profess consistently over time as much impartiality as possible. You go with peer reviewed sources. You go like there is still a sense of shared epistemology, right? The gaining of knowledge, how we understand what is true to be true. That knowledge exists still in the world, and there are facts, and it is not the business of Murdoch papers or any other papers to be like, I understand everyone's got an ideology, everyone's got a slant, everyone's got an approach. You should at least give the impression that you are trying to maintain some kind of balance. That there is journalistic integrity is still a thing, and it is disappointing beyond measure that the Murdoch papers aren't adhering to that.
It's funny, I just started watching The Newsroom with my partner Elle.
Yes.
It's obviously a lot about this stuff, albeit prior to the Trump era. It does sort of dig into sort of a lot of this stuff and the Koch brothers and all this other sort of stuff.
And the Newsroom interesting in that, to me, it was a... Like, I know it's very Aaron Sorkin-y, and like people talking really fast while walking, and also everyone's absurdly clever. Like has perfect quips always.
Almost too clever.
Yeah, almost too clever. And of course, everyone's seen the opening speech of the first episode that went viral ages ago, where he just talks about how Americans don't aspire to be intelligent anymore and all that. But the thing I thought always struck me with the Newsroom was how it seems to be about a Fox News that's left-leaning.
Yeah.
Kind of in what they do. And I was like, it's an interesting lens to look at if you're, rather than just looking at it through just as the drama it is. It's kind of like, you know, if you don't like the idea of a news organization that's got a very clear agenda and doing their best to like better the world through their agenda, and you see that as like, oh, well, that's what Fox News does. Like that's just them trying to like warp the world to their views. You're like, but they're kind of doing it, but they just happen to be views I agree with, and it really kind of makes you think of like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yes, but that is not. I don't think that really accurately reflects the media ecosystem as it actually exists. Like you've got Fox News, which is its own thing. They're just like, you know, they claim to be, that was their tagline, fair and balanced. But I don't think there's any like trying to give the appearance of being actually balanced, right? And then you've got the anti-Fox News, which is MSNBC and CNN. But these are not sources which are like pro-left as much as they are like pro-truth and like pro-actual journalism. And just because of how far Fox News has pushed the Overton window to the right, that comes across as being the opposite. It's the anti... MSNBC and CNN are the anti-Fox News, not the opposite of Fox News. They're not the left-leaning version of Fox News. They're good reporting, which then puts them in opposition with Fox News. Am I making sense? Like,
Yeah, no, I get you.
we don't have we don't have a far left journalistic propaganda mouthpiece apparatus. Like, it just doesn't exist, like either here or in America. Like, people think like that's the ABC.
Now far left, basically.
Right. And that's what they say. The ABC and Fairfax and all this sort of stuff is like, oh, it's the lefty media beat up. And it's like, not really. Like, they're pretty centrists. like maybe center left. I don't think you could, like, some of the shit that I've been seeing coming out of Fairfax, especially lately, I was like, these are like almost kowtowing to like far right talking points, clickbaity bullshit. Like, yeah. So to the extent that we have
Changed a lot when they got bought out.
When they were merged against their will with Channel 9.
Yeah, it wasn't immediate, but just over time, I started noticing it.
It's
like the
I've
tone,
noticed
the
that now as well.
headlines.
To me, it seems like indistinguishable from the Murdoch press. They've gone back to like down to this same exact like lowest common denominator opinion, clickbaity bullshit, horseshit.
Well, they have to, otherwise they don't get readers.
Okay, but like,
at what part of what the media code?
Oh well, yeah, and that's why
is trying to achieve.
There's the that's the two-pronged problem, really, right? Because it's like, you know, the Fourth Estate, journalistic integrity, like hold the bastards to account, all that sort of stuff. But also, they have to be a business. They have to get readers, and that's the balance. So it's a two-pronged sort of thing of they need to be doing the right thing as their role as journalists, but also people need to be willing to read and engage with it.
I think the problem with our media landscape here in Australia currently is that you have independent sources of news, which is good. You have things like The Conversation, right, for example. But the problem with The Conversation is that it's written, right? It's not it's not like fun, digestible like TV or like Sky News, where it's like constantly streaming and it's like this fun, exciting, watchable, shareable thing. Alan Jones's pieces on Sky News are like these very visceral sort of like attention grabby pieces where it's like The Conversation might have a fucking excellent 4,000 word article about climate change and what's happening, but like that only services like 8% of the population, you know what I mean? Like, it services a very small minority of people who fucking read. Like, it's not
the same problem with the arts in the sense that as we have more things over time because of technology and digitalization that now compete for our attention, it's harder for people to get a substantial share of that pie because people are always looking for the next thing. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, and that's a trend which is very hard to overcome. And I don't think will be overcome without sort of some major legislative changes.
In terms of the ownership sort of stuff, definitely.
I really think we need to, like, when too many people owned railways, or too few people, I should say, owned railways in the 1800s, antitrust legislation came in and broke them up. We used to have a 2 out of 3 rule here in Australia, which says you can only own a certain number of, like, certain kinds of properties at once. You can't own radio, TV, and newspapers, right? You can't have the plethora. But because the media landscape became so fragmented and these business models became so... just became sort of inappropriate for the 21st century, they were allowed to combine. Fairfax and Channel 9 being mashed together is a perfect example of that. And the problem is the only people that are impoverished by that are the public, because now, as you know, as Kevin Rudd said in that clip, 70% of newspaper ownership is concentrated under Rupert Murdoch, and that is deleterious for our democracy. That is bad. That is a bad thing. And so, just like with Rockefeller in the early 1900s, getting a monopoly on oil, or just like, what we should do with Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook owning, the majority of social media attention, we should enforce the antitrust legislation that is on the books and break these companies up. Facebook should be like 7 companies. Facebook should be Instagram. Facebook should be WhatsApp. Facebook should be Facebook. Facebook should be Messenger. That should be like 8 companies. But instead, it's all concentrated under the one umbrella, and that makes things anti-competitive.
But with newspapers, the reason why Murdoch and Fairfax and the reason why everything's conglomerating is because they were all individual papers and they were not profitable at all. But then maybe you have to let some of them fail and keep the media ownership still more fragmented. So you've got fewer papers maybe overall, but they're not all owned by fucking one dude who doesn't believe in climate change. Maybe. I think you've got to change the landscape in terms of things like the what's it called? The ACCC's
Google,
code.
Media code.
Like that is the way to probably get around it, because it means that revenue is distributed in a better way. Because you've got to have revenue. Otherwise, if you can have revenue, then you can break them up and then they'll fail all straight away.
Sure, but the problem with that is, okay, say the ACCC does put in this code, say a bunch of it, a bunch of new money starts coming through to journalistic endeavors. Murdoch owns 70% of those, newspaper journalistic endeavors and stands to benefit the most and in the most pronounced way compared to anyone else. So the problem of concentrated media ownership only gets worse in that situation, because the guy who's winning wins even harder as a result.
My point being is that you can't just break things up. You've got to do something else first to change the actual foundations of the industry, and then you can look at antitrust stuff.
Okay, switch off the internet then. What do you like? What's the plan?
Well, as I said, change. That's what I'm saying. Is that don't break up stuff first and then go, let's see what happens. Let's try and get some legislative stuff around how content is shared and paid for, and then you can look at stuff like, let's break up large companies, whether it be even things like Google or Facebook, which again will probably never happen because they're too big to fail.
All the more reason why they should be broken up.
Exactly. Now, should we talk about Ms. Coney Barrett?
So we learned some things. Hopping across the seas to America.
Things aren't just cooked here.
Things are cooked everywhere. So you might have noticed that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away some weeks ago, and Trump said, "Look, I know we last time around we pushed it. We made fun of the Democrats in an election year from wanting to appoint a Supreme Court judge. So we've taken the lesson and we're not going to appoint one ourselves to be intellectually consistent." No, of course not. They said, fuck that, fuck you. We appointed a judge that we weren't supposed to last time in Merrick Garland, and we're going to appoint one this time as well, because go fuck yourself.
Because you guys would do it too.
You guys would, and the Democrats are like, but you are the only ones who have. That was 8 months out from an election. They blocked the appointment of Judge Merrick Garland when Obama appointed him, or was looking to appoint him. And this one is 3 weeks out from an election. I think like 20 million Americans have already voted. It's like literally during the course of an election, essentially, that they're pushing this through. And Trump actually said to his colleagues in the Senate, his Republican colleagues, I want you to stop focusing on the aid package that the Democrats have passed and want, to the stimulus package for American consumers because of coronavirus and everything that's going on. Stop focusing on that. I want you to focus on jamming through this nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, because we're going to need her to judge about something to do with ballots when I contest the election in the future, I guess was the implication.
Yeah, when I fully intend to question the result of the election, I'm going to need her on my side. Okay, thanks, bye.
Yeah. And so they've
had her confirmation hearings.
Yeah. Week. So what we learned is Amy Coney Barrett is a complete partisan hack. More or less.
Did we learn that, or was that just confirmed?
I mean, I feel like we had a pretty good idea that was the case before. But even when the thing which really fucked with me was like where she refused to answer like basic questions about common law because of the perspective of the questioner. And I guess maybe it's because of the fact that like the Democrats in the Senate are essentially impotent at this point. There's nothing they can do to stop her from being passed. Like this is just the Republicans are essentially going to rubber stamp her and push her through because they have the votes and the Democrats can't stop them. So, but it seems like she didn't want to answer basic questions on like points of law. They're like, is it illegal for people to intimidate voters during an election? And she just like refused to answer the question. Well, I need to see the precedents. I need to consult the law. I need to do, which is an acceptable answer if someone asks you how you would rule on a case. But if someone asks you, is this the law? The answer is yes, that is illegal for someone to intimidate voters at the polls. Like that is an uncontroversial, that's just a basic law question. Like even I could tell you that. Like if you ask me, is this illegal? Is murder illegal, Adam?
Well, it depends which jurisdiction you're in. You're on the moon. I suspect it would be. There's no rules up there, so you do whatever you want.
That's the thing. Is like, yes, it's a basic law question, but it's after the president has said, "Hey, maybe intimidate people at the polls."
Yeah,
white supremacist lackeys. So if the president has suggested people do it, maybe I shouldn't be on the record saying it's totally illegal.
And that's exactly the problem. So yeah, it's horribly, terribly dispiriting and awful, and there's basically nothing anyone can do about it. She's going to be a Supreme Court judge, and very much against Roe v. Wade, has been on the record publicly signing letters that are anti-abortion, anti-fertility as well, like fertility doctors, like claiming that fertility treatment was like some sort of religious abomination and therefore shouldn't be allowed. That's something that she's, signed her name to in the past. And the Fertility Doctors of America fucking association, whatever it was like, hey, we're not endorsing this candidate. This is not anything we've ever had to do before, because we're doctors, but we don't support this candidate. She holds a bunch of extremely regressive, religious, conservative views. She belongs to a church, People of Praise or something like that. They speak in tongues. It's extremely batshit crazy and sad and disappointing, and she's going to be one of the most powerful people in the land for the next 40 years. Tom, thoughts?
Sad. Those are my thoughts. It's just sad. I cannot fathom how terrified anyone in America who might ever find themselves in need of like fertility care or like in need of an abortion or anything like that must be feeling right now. Just the war on policing women's bodies is just must be horrifying.
It's grotesque.
It makes the Handmaid's Tale like weirdly prevalent.
It's funny you say that, Adam, because there was something about this church where certain members of their group were referred to as handmaids. That's not even a joke. That is a real thing that exists.
Dig up,
you idiots.
To be clear, she's not going to go, start day one and then just be like bam, 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 bam. But the way this will work will be there'll be court cases that are brought up where she will be the judge or one of the judges. And then the decisions that are made will set precedents, which will affect things laid down the line in terms of how it filters out the other
for decades to come. And I think to say that she is just like a judge, just like anyone else, who calls balls and strikes as she sees it, like. No, the Federalist Society is a conservative group that selects judges and nurtures their careers over time because they hold the most, ardently, extremely arch-conservative views. And, the reason that she was on a list to begin with to be chosen was because she has been part of this conservative apparatus, this pipeline of judges that takes people and develops them for judicial leadership because of their extremely conservative views. That is what the Federalist Society does. So Trump saying I didn't ask her about Roe v. Wade and we didn't talk about this, they don't have to, because the reason she is on a list that he has chosen from is because she already believes in all the things he believes. You know what I mean? This is the terrible shit, extremely conservative judicial list. Pick one of any of these terrible people and you'll be fine. That is the Faustian pact that the Republican Party has made with Trump for the last 4 years. It's you can do whatever you want. You can fucking do the Ukraine call. You can corrupt Russia. Yeah, you could do all that. Just don't fucking say anything. Just let me have my judges. I just want my judges. You can fucking just And then that way he becomes a one-term president, hopefully, that has appointed at least 3 judges at this point.
That's a lot. It's a lot, isn't it?
Jimmy Carter appointed none in one term, for context. So it's incredibly problematic because these are lifetime appointments. They last, the younger the person is, the longer they might stay. There's this running joke that like the Federalist Society just chooses the most conservative like person graduating law school and like wants to make them a Supreme Court judge just to give them like 60 years on the bench. Like it is a fucking joke what is happening on the conservative side of politics with their judges. And I'd say call your senators, call your congressmen if you're in America, but there's no fucking point. They're all, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's what's pretty much done now.
It's a done deal.
The decision's been made because they're all spineless.
If you are relying on a Republican lawmaker to grow a spine at this late stage of the game, you might be found wanting.
It'll be interesting to see, and this is more broadly speaking, if Trump, when Trump loses.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, hey?
Adam, don't tease me like that.
Just a little Salt Bay. I wonder what will happen with the Republican movement, whether or not there will be some sort of, crisis of conscience where they sort of try to re-examine what they're about, and maybe that, organisations like the Tea Party, the Federalist Society, and all those kind of offshoots that have strong ties are influencing the direction of the Republicans. Whether or not, there's a pivot away from those, I'd love it if that would happen. But
I doubt it.
What might happen is they'll go harder, harder down that line.
Yeah.
And you'll find that you might even have someone next election who's not as is crazy, but not as crazy and incoherent as Trump, but someone who's a lot more
someone who can sell it.
Directed. Yeah, exactly.
I do worry about that because after the 2012 election, they had where Mitt Romney lost against Obama, they did have one of these postmortems where basically they said the Republican Party needs to find its conscience, it needs to move to the center, it needs to stop engaging in racist rhetoric, it needs to embrace people of color, Latinos, bring them into the big tent of the party, broaden the base. That's how you win elections traditionally, is by getting people to like you. And they've said, we're going to ignore all that and we're going to elect Cheeto Jesus next election cycle instead. So clearly there is no appetite in the Republican machinery for change, and I guess they're just going to double down on voter suppression and all the techniques that have allowed them to get this far as it is. I don't think the Republican mega donors are going to change their mind. Sheldon Adelson and the Koch brothers and these billionaires that fund this massive apparatus, they're not changing their minds. They're not going anywhere unless they die, in which case they'll be replaced by other arch-conservative billionaires. There's no shortage of them, it seems. So no, I have no great hope that the Republican Party is going to round the corner, but I will say this, there has been so after that tweet where Donald Trump said to just focus on the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett, he saw that the stock markets took a plunge because obviously no stimulus package in the face of coronavirus on an ongoing basis would be devastating to the economy. Instructed the Republicans in Congress to also work on this relief package and make sure it gets up and running, even offering what he said was more money than what the Democrats were asking for. But I think the Republicans, sort of foreseeing the potential results of the election, the hardline fiscal conservatives wanting to keep their hardline fiscal conservative chops, are not really wanting to jump on this deal, because if Trump goes, they're still going to need to be able to turn around to their constituents and say, hey, look, it's me, Ted Cruz, the fiscal conservative Tea Party guy. You loved me last time, remember? And if they vote for a massive aid package, they may not be able to do that. If Trump wins, that's great. If Trump doesn't win, they need to shore up their conservative bona fides, right? Their arch-conservative credentials. There's nothing for them to gain politically by passing that stimulus package through at this point. And so it seems like Trump is at a bit of a stalemate with his own party, even just because they're not confident that he's going to win.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, as you said, was it 20 million Americans have already voted? There were lines.
I think it's like, over 20 million easily.
People were lining up for hours and hours and hours to vote, which is...
People in Georgia, I saw tweets, people in Georgia that got to the front of the line and celebrating that they waited in line 11 hours to be able to vote. Like, that is a level of commitment which...
If that was Australia, I'd just be like, nah, I'm done.
I don't know if I've waited 11 hours in line for anything. Like, even when the new Harry Potter books were coming out when I was a kid, the new iPhone, fucking nothing. I don't wait 11 hours for anything.
Tom, would you wait 11 hours for anything in your life?
For anything?
What would be the thing that you would wait 11 hours for?
It's a good question, Adam.
See, that's the thing. You're asking me at the worst point in my life because we've been locked down for so long. Like, I'd wait 11 hours in line to get a beer at the pub at this point.
Ooh,
if you'd asked me that a year ago, like if it was an 11-hour wait in like a big queue, and we're talking like gaming convention queue where it's like stuffy and smelly and you worry you're going to catch something. I guess that's kind of what it would be like now. But all that...
It's almost exactly like going to a convention, really. It's like going to Comic-Con.
Yeah, pretty much. Just like an 11-hour queue in like these cramped, smelly conditions. But if at the other end it was like all my friends and family and we're all going to like have beers at the pub, worth it. But if you'd asked me that a year ago, I would have been like, nah, I'd just go a different day. So I think my perspective's warped. But, you know, pub with all my mates. I'll wait 11 hours for that right now.
Fair enough.
There you go.
What about you, Adam? What would you wait 11 hours for in line?
A haircut at this point.
You need it. You sorely need it, mate. Have you considered dreads? Just really commit to the bit?
No, I was thinking of going a small ponytail.
Mm-hmm. Little man bun?
Yeah, just a little rat tail at the back. Just, embrace my Tasmanian suburban culture and just sort of, there you go. Just get a little rat tail in there. Yeah.
I love that for you. That's nice. On that note, we have been, we are, and we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that are ruining the world that have, do, or ever will exist at Unnatural Show. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at George Tipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
You can follow me to the hairdressers.
and on Instagram at...
AC Doreen.
So you can see the outcome of that haircut when and if it does eventuate. And please do go to aph.gov.au to find that petition, or you could just Google Murdoch Royal Commission and it'll be the first thing that comes up. I've got a link in the comments of this video for you to click on if that works for you as well. And try rage desperately against the dying of the light. Thanks for listening, guys. Love your faces. Appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week.